Dorothy Jackson Kimble, The Catalyst from A Mighty Long Way, a memoir. Going north from Cameron, you eventually come upon the small city of Highland Park. Farther east, past Cameron, but only a half a block away, it is the Chrysler Freeway. A little further east is the city of Hamtramck. Going west from where we live, the intersection of 12th Street, now known as Rosa Parks Boulevard, and Claremont was about 15 city blocks from our house. This is the famous intersection where the 1967 Detroit riots began. I remember the first day of the riot. It was on July 23, 1967. I leisurely awoke to a bright, hot Sunday morning around 7. Sam and the girls were still asleep. As I got out of bed and I opened the blinds, I was unpleasantly surprised to see vast clouds of eerie black smoke billowing in the sky at a distance toward the west. I tugged on Sam's arms to wake him up. "Get up," I hollered. "I don't know where it's at, but there's something on fire." Sam jumped up and looked out the window. He said, "Something's on fire, all right. Looks like it's up there around 12th Street in Claremont." He quickly put on some clothes and went to find out from the neighbors what had happened. In a few minutes, he came back excited and said, "Dot, don't get all upset. I think they're rioting like they did in 43. Just stay in the house until I find out something else about what's going on." The neighborhood was already buzzing with rumors of how many people had been killed. It was years later, in fact, fairly recently, when I discovered that Laverne and Wanda, both just under 21, had been out that Saturday night, way past their curfew. They got caught up in the beginning of the riot while dropping their cousin, Harvey, home. Harvey lived west, just one block from the chaos that Laverne and Wanda had to travel through to get back home. Laverne recalled the early hours of the riot. Harvey, Wanda, and myself had been out partying all night. Around 4 or 5 a.m., we dropped Harvey off at home on Claremont and 14th. As we crossed 12th Street, we saw people breaking out store windows, looting in stores, and running through the streets carrying stolen goods and screaming. Stores were burning everywhere. There seemed to be mass hysteria. Wanda also remembered what happened. I heard store burglar alarms going off. People had been out partying and a lot of them were high. They were breaking plate glass windows. We stopped the car and walked down the first block off Claremont asking people what was going on. Some said they were mad because black people had been mistreated. They were saying things like, "We're always the last to get hired and the first to get fired." We went into a drugstore where people were taking merchandise, and I decided to join in on the action. I grabbed some deodorant. The cops hadn't come yet, but we thought it was time to get out of there. Laverne said, "I knew the situation was extremely dangerous. I maneuvered the car through the crowds and put my foot to the metal. We had to get home in one piece." 12th Street from West Grand Boulevard to Claremont was a crowded, gaudy commercial district. In the wee hours of the 23rd, during the heat of the night, a Blind Pig, a place where alcoholic beverages are sold illegally, located in that part of the city, had been raided by the Detroit police. The news traveled quickly with rumors that white policemen were brutalizing black people. As the rumors spread, the exaggeration kindled hostile anger. The anger mixed with the hot weather. It was like a bomb had exploded. The area was in chaos. There were shootings and some of Detroit's citizens were killed. The Blind Pig incidents touched off 4 anxiety-laden days of looting, burning, and sniping. But there was an order to the disorder. Although looting and burning started in the 12th Street Claremont area, there were men who, mostly on Sunday and Monday, instigated thousands of people citywide into looting by breaking out plate glass windows of city stores, which were mostly pawn shops, furniture, and grocery stores. The instigators moved from store to store, making it easy for the men, women, and children who wanted to enter a store to loot it. When the looters finished getting what they wanted, someone would come and set it on fire. The arsonist showed a definite preference for white-operated business establishments. A number of black-owned businesses were burned only because fires that started elsewhere had spread. Our black dentist moved from Joy to Dexter to Puritan and Wyoming because the building where his office was located upstairs over a store had burned down. When I first saw those eerie black clouds, they were in the distance. The ominous fires came much closer to home before that long, stress-filled day was over. Most of the white storekeepers in our immediate neighborhood, whose businesses were looted and burned, had been there for years. As a teenager, Sam had liked working as a stock boy for Phil and his wife Lily, who were Jews. They owned the supermarket, one of the stores on Oakland that was burned down only a block away from where we lived. The looters walked or rode in cars. They carried merchandise from the stores to their homes and merrily showed off what they had stolen. I was angry and afraid the arsonists might decide to set the houses on fire. The looters and arsonists I watched were people who lived in my neighborhood. I was disappointed and sad when I saw them greedily taking part in the looting. I didn't want any of the stolen goods brought into our house because I thought it would bring bad luck. I felt hurt when some of the close neighbors and friends that I had grown up with called me a square. Law enforcement wasn't controlling the emergency and I felt helpless, but there was nothing I could do. Our neighborhood became a war zone. Sam didn't share my disappointment in our neighbors. He thought differently about the rioting. And in spite of my apprehension, he bought a pair of black leather dress shoes from one of the young men. He also bought a dark green shark skin summer suit. Sam still brings those shoes out of the closet every now and then and wears them for a day. And for a long time, he would periodically exercise to flatten his stomach muscles and shed a few pounds so he could try out the suit and wear it. He'd tell me, "Look, Dot, I can still get in it." He looked good in this suit, too. But when Cherise, our oldest granddaughter, was 16, the suit had come into style for young girls to wear. Sam let her borrow it to wear to a party once, and we haven't seen it since. I finally got over my distress concerning the clothes that Sam bought, but it took me a long time to do so. Sam already knew how it felt to be in a war. He served in World War II in the Pacific Theater, a place of significant events, and as a T5 technical corporal on the island of Okinawa and in Hawaii. He was in charge of the supplies, clothing, tools, artillery, etc. for his platoon. Having tasted of war, he wasn't frustrated like I was during the riot. I had never been immersed in violence except for the times when my mother and stepfather's arguments became physical and I would be afraid he would hurt her. In the 1943 Detroit riot, when I was 14, the city erupted over an incident that was alleged to have occurred on Belle Isle. An article in the Detroit News dated in 1943, I don't have the complete date, says, police stated the serious rioting started at the Forest Club. The club had a 2-level roller skating rink, a 107-foot bar, and a 26-lane bowling alley. Sonny Wilson was the black owner of the business that was located at Forest and Hastings Streets. The article further stated, a crowd was incited by a false statement that a Negro woman and her baby had been hurled from the bridge at Belle Isle. The immensity of the 1943 riot didn't affect me like the 1967 riot did 24 years later. The ominous wailing of the civil disturbance sirens reminded me of the sirens I heard during World War II. The fires raging one city block from where I lived were frightening. The radio commentators drearily forecast the latest reports all day long. There was apprehension among my neighbors and my children. All of this caused me to have stress. At the time of the 1967 riot, the girls were ages 20, 19, 14, and 12. President Lyndon B. Johnson sent the National Guard into Detroit because of the civil disturbance. I don't know what Florida state they came from. One evening at dusk, while the city was still in turmoil, a young white National Guardsman crept into our backyard, holding his high-powered rifle with the attached bayonet pointed forward and up. We had 3 upstairs bedrooms, 2 on the front and 1 in the back of the house. Sam was asleep in our front bedroom. The girls and I had been in the back bedroom, peeping out the windows when the trooper came into our yard. I quietly guided them along the floor to the top of the stairs where we crawled down to the reception hall, through the living room and on into the dining room, going directly to the window facing the backyard. I could see well enough to know that he was afraid. I was fearful that if he heard movement in our house, his fear would cause him to shoot one of us. Silently, I led my children back upstairs by crawling along the floor to the stairway. I will never forget the sight of that frightened young man, away from home, doing his duty, patrolling the alleys and backyards of people who were just as fearful as he was. Teresa remembers what happened the day after the National Guardsmen entered our backyard. Me, Sylvia, and Grace and Carol, our neighborhood friends who were also sisters, were on the front porch talking when we all saw a green army tank drive slowly past on Oakland. Our house was situated so that we could look straight up Hague to Oakland, just a block away. In our panic, we scattered. I remember jumping off the first or second step from the porch and hitting the sidewalk. I skinned my left knee and have scars there as my memory. All of us ran towards the backyard to get out of sight. A few months after the riot, people were still angry, sullen, and scared. One day I went to a business meeting in the suburbs with white friends from AA. When I realized it was getting dark and that I had to drive home alone, I became panicky. I had a fearful drive until I got close to home. There was one joyful time that came after the riot. Cherise Laverne, our first grandchild, was born December 22, 1967, at Florence Crittenden Hospital in Detroit. She was our special Christmas gift that year. In 1968, the year following the riot, our home was broken into several times while Sam, Laverne, Wanda, and I were at work, and Sylvia and Teresa were in school. Since Sylvia was the first one to come home every day during this time, she was the first to encounter the house in shambles. She remembered inspecting the house to see what was missing. Sylvia called me at Mayberry Elementary School, where I worked as a secretary, to tell me what had happened. Maybe it was only 6 blocks from our house. I called the police and quickly left the school. Whoever broke in forced open the side door that led to the kitchen or basement. The thieves took what they could find that could be quickly exchanged for money. We didn't have any proof of who did it, but we had our suspicions. Whoever it was broke in a second time, not too soon after the first break-in. One afternoon after the break-ins, I got in our car, a black 1964 Dodge Dart with red leather upholstery, and drove down Cameron. As I approached the corner at Wellington, there were 3 young men standing by another car parked at the curb. As I drove past, I recognized one of the men we suspected of breaking into our home. Strong resentment welled up in me, and I had an almost overpowering urge to hit all of them with the car because I thought all of them had something to do with the break-ins. But instead of hitting them, I glared at them as I drove past. Another day, I took out our handgun out to the back porch and practiced my shooting at a large thermometer that was hanging on the front of the garage. I was trying to send a message to the thieves. I have a gun that I will use, and I can hit my target fairly accurately. One neighborhood had become infested with drugs and the crime that comes along with it. The sound of gunfire close to the house was commonplace. I became anxious for my family and myself. I felt we needed to get away from the violence. The break-ins were the catalyst that caused Sam and I to move from our old house and neighborhood, where we had spent our childhood, teen years, and early adulthood, to another side of town, about 11 miles northwest. The time had become to begin again.